Number 1. I found a cave. I like to go hiking in the area around where I grew up. Although I personally live in the city, I still own the property where I grew up in. Whenever I feel like I just need to get away from the world, I drive out there for a weekend, get out my hiking gear, and just go exploring. I tend to always hike in the same area. My trips were infrequent enough that I could explore the same area over and over again, and it could always seem like a new experience. I do recall one time when I hiked a lot further than I ever had before. I cannot remember exactly what possessed me to do it. I had gotten an early start in the day, I suppose, and just decided to see if I could discover anything new. After a while, I did. I came across a cave. I was a bit surprised because it was a good-sized cave. It had a large mouth and looked almost like the sort of cave you see in a television show or a cartoon. I'm not sure if I'm describing it well, but the whole point is that I could walk right into the cave. I didn't have to crawl in. It was a bit wet, with some puddles and such, but I was wearing some very water-resistant hiking boots anyway. I guess in retrospect, it might not have been a cave at all. It might have been an abandoned mine. I have no way of really knowing for sure. So, I decided to go ahead and try exploring it a little. The cave had a bit of a dank and humid feeling to it. There was also a really strong creepy factor to it too. It almost felt like someone was watching me the whole time. But I'd never ran into anyone while I was out hiking, so I wasn't really concerned that somebody was watching me. And I honestly didn't believe that there was anyone in that cave. Anyway, it was actually a relatively deep cave, and I was surprised that I was able to walk rather deep into it. The ceiling didn't decline in any dramatic way, but there were a few stalactites, though they weren't very big. I had to be careful to keep from hitting them, though. At one point, I turned around to check and see how deep I had descended into that cave. I may have been about 50 feet from the door of the cave. At that point, I made a mistake, and kept walking as I turned around. When I turned to face forward again, I nearly walked into one of the stalactites. I had to try and catch myself. But when I did so, I lost my balance and fell face first into a puddle. I was a bit upset at my clumsiness, but I didn't get hurt in any way. Then, as I began to pull myself out of the puddle, I thought I heard the distinct sound of a little girl laughing. I shook my head, realizing that I must have been hearing things. But when I did, I heard it again. And this time, it was very clear and distinct. There was a little girl laughing, and it was just one voice. One giggle. Completely creeped out, I got up to my feet and didn't even try to regain my composure. I hurried out of that cave as quickly as possible. The giggling continued, but it got lighter as I rushed out. The walk home was creepy as hell too. I mean, I didn't hear the laugh since I left the cave, but the feeling of being watched was still overpowering. The memory of what happened followed me to my childhood home, and I had a really difficult time sleeping in the house that night. I honestly didn't feel comfortable until I left my family home and returned to the city. Number 2. Crawling. One of my favorite pastimes is finding and exploring caves. It's generally pretty fun for several reasons. It's interesting to find areas that might not have ever been seen by anyone else. Sometimes caves can be very creepy as well. And I have to admit that the dangerous aspect of exploring caves is pretty exciting as well. I'm not going to mention exactly where this happened though. We do have a lot of caves in the general area, so it's pretty easy to find them. I really don't want someone to read this, however, and think that cave exploring is a good idea, and then run off and get themselves lost, hurt, or even worse, and then blame me for this. A few years back, when I was out exploring, I was climbing up the side of a pretty big hill. I noticed some rock formations that led me to believe that there might be an opening to a cave. I found what I was looking for, and I was pretty excited. The cave entrance was rather short, however. There was no way I could get into the cave by walking. I would have to get on my belly and crawl into it. This is actually pretty common, though. There was also no real guarantee that the ceiling would rise, or that there would be any sort of tunnel or compartment once I got in there. But half the fun is finding out. So I got down on my belly and slid myself into the cave. It was dirty and a bit wet, but that's cave exploring for you. I quickly moved through the cave. I was able to move pretty quickly because although the ceiling was low, it wasn't so narrow that I couldn't somewhat crawl. After a few minutes, I came to the end of the tunnel, and there was a compartment at the end. I reached over and felt for my flashlight. I wanted to shine it into the cave before stepping into it. As my hand fumbled for it, I heard something that chills me to this very day. A very distinct and gruff voice from inside the cave said, "Get the fuck out of here." I jerked and my head hit the ceiling. I dropped my flashlight as a flash of pain went through my body. Fortunately, although I was hurting, I wasn't knocked senseless. There was someone in that cave. He didn't want me there. I was going to leave. I scrambled on my belly, hands and knees, to get out of that cave as quickly as I could. It wasn't easy and took me a few minutes. Each moment, each crawl forward, I expected someone to reach out and grab my ankle. I expected whoever that man was to grab my ankle and pull me back into that cave. I was pretty scared shitless. But I made it out of the cave, sans my flashlight. I didn't care too much though. I just got up and ran far away. I don't know who would be hanging out in a cave like that. And maybe some weird drug dealers making some illegal drugs. Maybe something worse. I'm glad I didn't find out. And that's another reason why I don't recommend doing this on your own. Trust me, you don't want to find out who he was either. Number 3. The Storm. This isn't a very long story, but I think it is pretty scary. I was out hiking with my girlfriend once in the deep woods. We often like to take a vacation and spend a week out camping. It's wonderful, and you rarely run into other people. It kind of makes you think of the sheer size of our planet, that this can happen with such a large population. Well, anyway, we were a couple days out in our hike when the weather report failed us. Large black clouds began moving in quickly over the hills. We had a tent, but it seemed like the storm was going to be pretty violent. So we needed to find a place to put the tent where we would be somewhat protected. Serendipity seemed to be on our side, as we found a cave. We were able to put our tent up right in the mouth of the cave, and that gave us a lot of shelter from the wind. Also, it had begun to rain before we were able to get the tent up, so we were a little wet while we were in our tent. Being wet wasn't that big of a deal. We were a bit worried about the severity of the storm, and about what the ground conditions would be like after it was over. Still, we tried to put that out of our minds and tried to get some sleep. My girlfriend nudged me in the middle of the night, trying to wake me up. When I went to ask her what was up, she put her hand over my mouth. She whispered in my ear, "I think there's somebody out there." I immediately stiffened up a bit. I looked at my watch and it was nearly midnight. I didn't know why someone would have been out in the storm this long without finding some sort of shelter. It was still coming down pretty hard. I whispered back to her and asked her how she knew. She whispered that several times she saw a light through the wall of the tent. It wasn't right up on the wall, but someone had shown a flashlight on the wall from a distance. I rolled over and tried not to make much noise. I wanted to see the light if it were to come back. After a short period of time, I saw what she was talking about. Someone was definitely shining a flashlight on our tent. It wasn't moving any closer to us, though. It just wavered a bit for a few moments, and then it was gone. We tried our best to be quiet. If it had just been someone looking for shelter, the two of us figured they would have just come up and woke us up. Whoever was shining that light on us was being hesitant for some reason. That probably meant they were either nervous for some reason, or they were up to something less than honorable. As quietly as I could, I grabbed my hunting knife and made sure it was close to me. I whispered to my girlfriend that I would keep an eye open and an ear available to see if they came any closer. The light came back a few times during the night. It was the same way each time. It would shine through the wall of the tent from a distance, waver there for a few moments, then it would flash away. It came a little closer once or twice, but it never came right up on the tent. I didn't move, but kept myself at the ready. Sometime after 3 a.m., it was gone. I didn't see it again. When the sun came up, although I hadn't had much rest, I figured it might be a good idea for my girlfriend and I to pack up and leave. And my girlfriend opened up the tent and immediately screamed. I grabbed my knife and ran over to her. Lying right outside the door flap of the tent was a decapitated and bloodied bird carcass. It was pinned to the ground by a small knife. I felt my heart turn to ice. The person I saw with the light had gotten a lot closer than I ever thought, because when we set up the tent, we set up the opening of the tent facing the inside of the cave. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the button next to the tabby to be informed of new content. Let me know what you think in the comments and feel free to share this video with others. If you haven't already seen the second half of my collaboration with Bump in the Night, please use the button provided to check it out. Remember to subscribe to his channel while you're over there. Happy October. This is my absolute favorite time of year. I think I'm going to be pretty busy this month working on videos and getting the Halloween special done. If you have a paranormal story or two that you'd like to contribute to it, please send it to the email address in the description. I want to thank everyone for the submissions, for the likes, and for the comments. As I've mentioned before, it sometimes takes me a while to answer emails, but I will eventually get back to everyone. In the meantime, make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night. Collaboration with Bump in the Night, please use the button provided to check it out. Remember to subscribe to his channel while you're over there. Happy October. This is my absolute favorite time of year. I think I'm going to be pretty busy this month working on videos and getting the Halloween special done. If you have a paranormal story or two that you'd like to contribute to it, please send it to the email address in the description. I want to thank everyone for the submissions, for the likes, and for the comments. As I've mentioned before, it sometimes takes me a while to answer emails, but I will eventually get back to everyone. In the meantime, make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.